you initially had reached out to us for dad when he needed some planning, and he's since passed away.
Mhm.
Um, and now mom's in a facility.
Mhm.
We're at Westminster. So when you reached out to us, or before you reached out to us, what was your role in your parents' care?
Well, my parents did not require care.
Okay.
They lived independently in their own condominium. My mom had been kind of bedridden for several years because of back issues and osteoarthritis and several issues that really kept her housebound. And so my dad was her caregiver.
Okay.
And when I say caregiver, he really didn't do anything for her except, he did the cooking and the cleaning, that type of thing. But it wasn't like she needed 24-hour, somebody feeding her or anything.
Right.
And so my role at that point was just being a daughter and coming to visit. And then July of, I believe it was 2018, my dad, who was almost 90 something years old, was working in his garage up on a ladder, fixing a ceiling fan, and fell off and broke his hip and his femur. And at that age, it was very difficult. They just he went downhill from there. And was in the hospital in intensive care for, gosh, I want to say a month, maybe more. But during that time, he had all kinds of complications. He had 2 or 3 heart attacks and he was on a feeding tube and basically life support for a while, and it didn't look good. And then he pulled through, and but he was never the same again. And we knew he'd need 24-hour care. He had to learn to eat and to talk and to walk. Because of being on life support so long, he lost the ability to do all those things. So he had to go to a facility, like a nursing home, was living in Utah at the time, and quit my job, put all my things in storage, and I moved back to Florida because I knew my mom would need help, and I wanted to be there, to make all these decisions for my dad in the hospital. So I was just kind of talking to local people and people in the hospital, and they said, you really need to get an attorney. And everyone I talked to, whether it was neighbors or hospital staff, everybody was recommending your organization.
Oh, wow.
And said that it had the best reputation for elder law. And so that's when I contacted you. I really didn't know what to do at that point. I was kind of over my head and realized that pretty quickly that to be my dad's advocate and my mom's advocate, I needed to become power of attorney and get to be their healthcare surrogate. So that's when I contacted you and kind of just dropped the ball in your lap and let you take over.
Well, so yeah. So my next question was going to be kind of, what kind of problems were you trying to solve? And it, sounds like, you were trying to get, like you just said, get the power of attorney in place, get the healthcare decision-making documents in place. And
yes. And then there was the realization that he would never be able to return home. And my mom could not stay in this, 3-bedroom, huge condominium and take care of it and the outdoor space and everything. And she had always been willing to go to an assisted living because a lot of her friends were in this certain facility. And it was always my dad that wanted to stay at home. So at this point, I realized, okay, well, if dad's going to have to go to a nursing home, mom can at this point go to her facility that she wanted to. And so that meant, and my dad's name was on the
deed.
The deed, yeah.
Yeah.
And he couldn't sign anything. He was completely out of it. So this is why I had to decide to become power of attorney and get the ball rolling. So I had to put the condominium in my name and my mom's name, and there was a lot to do. And I didn't know which steps came first. I had no clue. I'd never done any of this before.
What were some of the frustrations that you were dealing with, either before you?
Not sure you have enough time for that, but let's see. Every little thing from, finding a realtor. Well, first of all, getting the condo fixed up, it needed a lot of repairs. So doing things like that, finding a realtor, getting it ready to show, and then all the legal ramifications of the paperwork and finding their documents and going through things that my dad and I had never discussed. He did all the banking, he did all of their paperwork, all of their insurance. My mom didn't even know where they banked. So this was
Wow.
a huge amount of research to try to figure out what to do. And then, of course, once we hired you, then finding all the documents that you would need. And it was kind of like a scavenger hunt in their condo. So that was a huge point of frustration.
Yeah, I can imagine.
To find it all.
You made it very easy for us to do our job. So like,
oh, well, that's good.
everything that we did, it was easier because of how organized you were, and you know, and getting everything to us. So
oh, that's great.
So what results would you say we achieved, or that you achieved working through us and with us? And what areas of your life improved? You're working now and you're out in Montana.
Right.
So what would you say, kind of, what did we achieve and what improved in your life, would you say?
Well, I ended up spending a year and a half in Florida to get all of this organized. Everything kind of rolls slowly, and looking for different facilities and making sure we had someplace for dad and someplace for mom. And with him being in intensive care and having multiple surgeries, and while he was in intensive care, we realized very quickly that his life's savings was going to be gone. And even with the insurance, with Medicare and with supplemental insurance that he had, a stay in the hospital in intensive care for a month or two will wipe out anybody. So all of his lifelong savings were going out the door, and we needed to be able to afford to put him in a nursing facility that would also be very expensive. And so I was kind of at my wits end, wondering, what do people do? And so you had suggested that, well, we can apply to get him on Medicaid. And that was a complete foreign idea to me. I didn't know that we could do that. And so you completely walked me through, and you gave me a list of the things we needed. But you know, you say I made it easy for you, but you made it easy for me because you said, this is what I need. You know, I could just follow that list and check it off and find those documents, or you know, acquire them, whatever I needed. Oh, we did get him. You did get him on Medicaid, and he was able to have that facility covered. And so that was huge. The other huge part was doing the recertification every year, and you know, getting me that information and telling me what you needed again, and when it was due and how to do it. And so that's huge, because I did only stay for a year and a half in Florida, and then moved to Montana, and am working a full-time job.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it is, it was a lot to be handling all of this 3,000 miles away. So for me to just hand these documents over to you and let you do it, that was really a big help. And the facility that we have my mom in, or still have her in, you had worked with the staff for a long time, and you were able to kind of guide me as to who to talk to and if I needed something from them. And so you've been a good advocate on our behalf for the facility where my mom is still today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Where would you say you heard from us, or not from us, but about us?
Well, we weren't in a facility at that point. So
That's right.
Neighbors in my mom's condominium in St. Petersburg. And then when my dad was in the hospital and people were telling me, well, you need to get some kind of representation, you need some help with all of this. And I would ask them, I don't think they were really supposed to tell me who they would recommend, but several of them told me, you know, in private, we've worked with, or we know people that have worked with this agency. They're highly recommended. And so I had done some research on my own and thought, yeah, this is where I need to go.
After meeting with us the first time, what made you decide to pull the trigger and work with us?
Well, you were just easy to talk to, and you seemed very knowledgeable about what we were going through. It sounded like you had a lot of clients who had not only been in the facilities, the one where my dad was going, and the one where my mom was going, and had a good rapport with the staff in those facilities. And I thought that was really important. And even the people in those facilities, once we did get established with them, they also had said really great things about your firm. And I will say that my dad was a retired attorney in St. Petersburg for many years, and a court magistrate. And so I did consult with his former partner at one point and asked him if he had any referrals. And so he had also referred you. So I knew that, with all of these people, and then meeting with you and feeling like you really had our best interests at heart, it was kind of a no-brainer.
In describing working with us, what area would you say you got the most value?
I would say your knowledge and experience, first of all, and knowing what the possibilities were as far as what we needed to do and how to get that on Medicaid. I can't even imagine where we'd be and what I'd be doing, trying to figure it all out. So just having somebody that I could pick up the phone and say, I'm frustrated with this, I'm not hearing back from whoever, Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare, and you were always right there. And actually being the liaison between me and these government entities that can sometimes be pretty confusing to work with.
I'd want to ask, how likely would you be to recommend us to somebody else who would be in a similar situation?
Oh, highly likely. And actually I have. So I grew up in St. Petersburg, and still am friends with a lot of my elementary, middle school, and high school friends, and we're all in the same boat, in the same age, with our parents going through the same thing. And many of them, their parents are in the same facility with my mom right now. And so anytime any of us get together and talk, and I've always recommended your firm and you to help them navigate, because unless you're in the business, you don't know about what's available for your parents, what needs to be done, what can be done. And so that's why you turn to a professional. And so I've definitely recommended you.
Well, thank you so much. If someone was listening to our conversation right now, and again, and they're in a similar situation or to where you were or where you are, why would you think that they would need to take action right now?
It's never too early to start, because the wheels turn pretty slowly with these government agencies. And I would say the time to start is now. Once you're in the moment, you've got a lot to deal with, like waiting for a tragedy in my family to happen, with my dad falling and being in intensive care. You've got so many things on your mind at that point that if you can pre-establish a relationship with somebody who's going to help you ahead of time, then it would be so much more helpful. I mean, I wish I had maybe had you on retainer or something ahead of time. But of course, my dad was always the one we went to for all the answers with anything. And we just didn't think that he'd be the one to be out of commission. So yeah, it's good to have an advocate. Definitely.
Wow, I appreciate it. And I really enjoyed meeting your dad. I remember the first time I met him was over at the facility, and it was fun to talk with him. I know it wasn't the ideal setting for all, and But I really enjoyed working with you and meeting him. So thank you for everything.
Yeah.
And is there anything that you would say that we could do better in providing services for someone?
Dealing with so many agencies and dealing with the facilities and lack of communication. I know how difficult it is for people to return phone calls or to be up there on the other end of the phone or the other end of email. But your office has always been there and somebody's always answering the phone. And if it goes to voicemail, they call me right back or email me. And the communication is key. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than waiting days, sometimes weeks to hear back. And so I think that's one of the things that one of the many things that you guys do really well is the communication. And especially when you're 3,000 miles away, or even if you're 3 miles away, to know that you can contact somebody and you're going to get a human on the other end is really, really important for the families. It really is.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much.